I.O.T. Powering the Digital Economy. Brought to you by Schneider Electric.
In the fast-changing media sector, creating content that makes the best use of new technology is the only way to stay ahead of the competition. Now that requires both creativity and risk-taking, and with more and more platforms gathering our precious data, the technological infrastructure has to be robust enough to cope. We get most out of our media online. It's a mixture of entertainment and information, and that's how we learn about the modern world in the modern world. There's huge competition here, particularly in the business-to-business part of the sector. So, in this programme, I'll be talking to the businesses which provide the media we consume. I'm meeting the man that curates the English language, and I'll be speaking to the advertising executive who thinks that traditional adverts are dead and buried. And we'll find out how the people that manage the infrastructure work to reduce latency times whilst keeping our data safe. The consumer face of media has changed beyond all recognition. There's more entertainment and news at our fingertips, and it's digital. What's more, it's available, well, on almost every device in easily digestible formats. The large B2B media operations have largely slimmed down. Some have gone to the wall, others have focused more on their consumer offerings. And that has left a group of leaner, hungrier media companies excited by the opportunities the sector has to offer. The aim of the Oxford University Press, or OUP, is to further the university's objective of excellence in research, scholarship and education by publishing worldwide. This organisation has been producing content for over 540 years, and that makes them one of the oldest publishers in the world. But they are also the ultimate adapter to digital innovation in the media sector. Tackling those challenges is Casper Grathwohl, President of the Dictionaries Division at Oxford University Press. Dictionaries are their most famous product, but in the age of the internet, where just about every fact, article or quote is available online, does anyone need a dictionary anymore?
I'm not sure I would see a place for a print dictionary in this world, or a digital dictionary that functions exactly like the print dictionary did. In context, what is the language query you have, and do you need to step out and consult a dictionary, or can you find a way to integrate that need into the experience that you've got?
I mean, I suppose the first shock for me is that I thought we were going to have an argument about, is the dictionary dead? And you go, well, yeah, no, the dictionary, there's a traditional dictionary, Adam, yeah, that's gone, that's gone. Yeah. So digital isn't about something that might change this business. It changed this business.
It did. I mean, with the advent of the web and the experience on the internet, and even some of those first websites that had major gravity, those included dictionary.com and some of these websites and web businesses that were really about satisfying queries in this new environment. And so it doesn't surprise me that one of the first websites that became popular were dictionary websites, because the dictionary itself is an analog database. It was built for digital before digital came, and so it was one of the first industries to get really disrupted by this new digital revolution.
But you're saying something much more fundamental, that to change the relationship between the dictionary and your customer means not to put it online, is to change the nature of the product.
Yes. And
so just explaining precisely what that would mean.
In a digital experience, you may want to know the meaning of a word, for example, as you're reading an article. And we realize now you no longer need to step out of that experience and consult a dictionary website or look something up, we have the tools and the capabilities now to be able to integrate an understanding of that meaning in that context, whether it's a scroll over and you're looking at it, making connections between pieces of text and a word and its meaning. And these kind of queries within the experience is a new way of understanding how to answer language questions.
So your dictionary is embedded in other people's works. Can you give me some concrete examples of the relationships you've built up with particular service providers and products which do that?
Yeah, we work with Zynga, which is a online gaming company, and they create Words with Friends, which is one of the most popular word games in the world. Part of that experience is OUP providing the word lists that power what's acceptable to play in that game, and not just in English. We provide that for multiple languages, and we scrub those word lists, we enrich that data, and the reason that you can play Words with Friends in English as well as Hindi and Italian is because OUP has created the data that keeps that relevant.
I imagine, now you told me all this, I'm thinking, oh, is it actually all your stuff behind it on Microsoft Word? Is it when I speak to my Google Assistant or my Alexa Assistant, is that all yours?
A piece of it is ours. It's definitely not all ours, but a lot of the intelligence that's embedded in language is when you are able to extract that, that's what's powering the AI revolution. That's what this kind of arms race among technology giants. A lot of what's powering that development and that innovation is around language engineering, and our data is used in quite a bit of that.
What the Oxford University Press is doing is really revolutionary. Arguably, their dictionary data is one of the key bits of technology driving the whole Internet of Things. And as voice control becomes more common, the value of that data will rise. But where there's a business opportunity, disruptor companies are never far behind. VaynerMedia has been around since 2009. They're a digital agency with big ambitions and lofty claims. They say they're a full-service digital agency built for the now, offering a range of services from modern video production to media planning, influencer marketing, Google and Alexa voice services, and everything in between. I think that means it's an advertising agency.
Eric Fulweiler is Executive Director at VaynerMedia. He's a veteran of the Clinton Foundation, Forbes, and the marketing and advertising company Mullen. He's now the driving force at VaynerMedia's London operation, and I want to find out what his business philosophy is.
The only thing that we're religious about is consumer attention, meaning we, from the CEO down, really only care about where people are actually spending their time today, or this month, or this year. And then we try to build a company of experts around what those channels are to create and distribute content for our clients. And I think a lot of agencies do that. The thing about us is that we're constantly changing what our area of focus is. So in 2009, when we started, we did a lot of community management on Twitter. We did a lot of micro content on Facebook. As the years have gone by, we've evolved with the space. We're creating content specifically for those channels. So the biggest changes for us, really it's just the rise of mobile and then social within that. But mobile as a platform, we're living through an era of disruption from a consumer attention standpoint that hasn't really happened at this scale since, I would argue, the 50s and 60s, when TV replaced radio as the primary device for consumer attention. And now it's the mobile device.
And yet, we all know that. So what difference does that make to the kind of output that you should be creating?
I think you need to make output that's mobile first. And I think...
What does that mean? I mean, so give me an example then of how an advertising message or a marketing message would be different because of your different disrupting type of approach to this.
Well, I think first of all, you said we all know that. I would agree with you. But I think that sometimes there's not enough common sense in marketing. One of the big things for us is that we think in this era of mobile, the idea of a commercial needs to evolve. So the modern day...
The basic idea of what a commercial is.
From a creative standpoint, the idea of how you tell a story as an advertiser should evolve to reflect the channel where it's being consumed. So a concrete example, we're trying to think of formats that feel much more like content that people actually want to spend time with, as opposed to a traditional commercial. So we did an ad for a client of ours that's actually a movie trailer. It's a fake movie trailer. We've done things that are like a sitcom or like a music video or a documentary. So it's just a different approach in trying to reinvent and modernize what a commercial looks like when it's in mobile.
So it seems that you're saying that a lot of people have just misunderstood where this market is going. They're using old-fashioned advertising tools on a completely different environment, and they miss the opportunity as a result.
I think so, yeah, and I think there's a lot of different reasons for that depending on the organization that you're in or the individual that you are. But I think fundamentally, it's all about change. There's always a lag between how consumers adopt new technology and where their attention actually is right now, and a marketer's ability to keep up with that. And it's that delta that creates opportunity for the people that are able to take advantage of it first.
The traditional, I suppose, advert is the big poster, a bit of text. We're now seeing the rise of, well, certainly video, but even more so audio, I suppose, and voice. What sort of disruption is that to the business model?
I think voice is massive, and I think a lot of people are underestimating it. There's a lot of...
Voice more than video?
I think voice has the potential to disrupt video, mobile, and social, and a lot of the kind of mainstream things that we talk about today in a way that people haven't fully comprehended yet. I think that we spent a lot of time talking about AR and VR and these things that are, you know, very sexy to talk about, but could potentially be further out, and voice is going to be here right now.
Give me an example of what you mean.
It just saves people time. So if you think about it, it is faster to be able to speak to something than it is to type something. And it's always good to bet on something that's going to save people time.
You talk a lot about the artistic, the editorial process. What about the analytics that the new technology allow you? What sort of difference does that make?
Right now, there's so much data, and I think it's become somewhat cliche to say that, but brands are not making the best use of the data that they have.
What are they missing out?
I think they're not finding the opportunities to actually have the science inform the art and the art inform the science. Meaning, they're not using enough data in their creative process, and then not using enough of the creative output to then inform their media planning and buying.
The rise of social media has led to a whole new breed of company like VaynerMedia who exploit digital platforms. So how long can the traditional media companies hold out against this tide, and will these social media organisations come to dominate every aspect of our digital lives? Well, I'll find out more after the break.
Media companies tell us how the world is through the content that they produce and distribute. How we access that content and how they store it relies on the robustness of the systems that support it. The technology behind all of this is mainly hidden from us, but it is key to how the Internet of Things works.
So when you look at what the content creators are facing and the challenges they have on the technology side, doing this type of video production is incredibly intensive on the computing side. So they need to be able to have computing located close to them in order to get the performance that they want. When you go and watch a movie, for instance, in The Great Gatsby, there was over 600 visual effects that were created by this company, Animal Logic. In order to do that, the amount of computing power it takes and the performance that they expect out of that IT really is pushing the limits of what we do. So it's interesting that many people in the industry tend to think about Google and Microsoft and these guys as, and they are cutting edge in what they're doing, but really it's media companies in many ways, the guys that are creating the content that are driving us very much on the edge of technology. So it's not only about art, but it's also about technology and how can they apply the technology to achieve their vision.
And the creators of all this new media need to make sure that it's viewable on all of the devices we use, but of course, one in particular.
There's no question that the mobile device is now becoming king. That mobile devices are what we designed for first. If a mobile ad does not come up within 3 seconds, 50% of the people turn off. And it deteriorates rapidly from there. And if you look at what the millennials and their expectations are, say they expect a 5 times better performance than I do, I would argue that in the future, this 3-second performance is going to go down. And that's why you see 5G being such a big topic in the industry. 5G promises to have 1,000 times the performance of 4G, potentially. Now, if you take that and say our expectations as humans is going to go up by 5 times in the next few years, that means our network now is going to be expected to be 5,000 times better. And this is a really significant challenge for infrastructure providers to help meet those challenges that the industry is facing.
So it's the system technology companies that are keeping both us and our IoT devices connected. And that means that the content producers and distributors can concentrate on keeping on the right side of the rules and regulations that govern them.
In May 2018, new European regulations come into force. The General Data Protection Regulations rewrite the rules regarding the data that big media companies can hold about individuals. Damien Tambini is an expert in media communication, regulation and policy at the London School of Economics, and he has a view about GDPR.
We are yet to see exactly how these rules will be applied in courts, but many things will change, including, for example, the regime on consent, so the conditions under which you will have been seen to give acceptable, informed consent for the use of your data, the ability to share data across organisations, the right to be forgotten will actually be written into law, so the ability to erase data, and the data portability rules. So in order to, for example, promote competition between social networks, you will have the right to take your data out in a machine-readable form and use it in another social network, for example.
When you look at GDPR, these are some of the most aggressive regulations around privacy and data protection that we see globally right now. And so our approach to this has been to try to implement a program that fits those requirements around the world, and knowing that if we are meeting those GDPR requirements here, that we are most likely right now then compliant in all of our markets. Now that can change, and so it's why we need to keep paying attention and making sure we're responding as different countries and different regions start to develop and evolve, and their regulation evolves. But right now we're adhering to a GDPR standard that looks like it is effective as a global policy.
That all sounds like common sense, but digital platforms, just like the ones that VaynerMedia provide content to, generate vast amounts of data. So where does the obligation to get the message out lie?
I think trust is critical for the growth of the digital economy. And I think that the big businesses of the digital age, the Facebook, the Googles, and the Amazon, can only scale and can only survive if there is trust with the consumer. And so change is always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's never completely linear, and I think that we're living through that now. 2 steps of them pushing, 1 step of regulation, and away we go.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people see regulation as an opposing force, something to be overcome, but it seems that you're describing it as a win-win, that these things can actually work in tandem.
I think it does not make sense for businesses, for most businesses, to try to fight this trend, because it's a good thing for a lot of consumers. And I don't think you should fight the market in that sense. I think instead you should understand where this change is going to take us and try to react quicker than your competition or other businesses. So again, it's reacting to change as opposed to trying to fight it.
Digital disruptors have perhaps an unfair advantage over traditional players who are very heavily regulated, and it could take decades for governments to create a level playing field. But the future is uncertain and things could change radically. I'll find out what could change after the break. Digital innovation is changing the global economy. Businesses are becoming more focused and more efficient. But what about the rest of the world? How is society changing because of the innovations being offered by business?
The future is something that VaynerMedia's Eric Fulweiler is preoccupied with.
You foresee some very big changes in how this sort of industry is going to work. If that happens, what sort of change will it make for society as a whole?
I think one of the biggest things is transparency. I think there's going to be a lot more clarity in what consumers are giving up when they partake in these free online services, because they're not free. We are giving something, we're just not giving we're not giving money, we're giving our information, we're giving our attention.
The phrase is, if you're not paying for it, then you are the product, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, in a capitalist society, there needs to be a value exchange in order for people to actually do something for you, which makes sense. And so transparency, I think, is the first thing. I think the other thing is, ultimately, it's a good thing for consumers because we're going to have more power, right? More of the advertising, more of the offering is going to be reverse engineered from what we want. And so in that world, as long as there is transparency, which again is a good thing, not just for consumers, but also for businesses, because you need to have trust in order to be successful in today's day and age, I think it's a win-win for both sides.
So a future of more of what you want when you want it.
Hopefully, would be the ideal.
So, all power to the consumer. But the OUP sees another, more altruistic path, one that benefits education in developing countries and their businesses.
One of the things that Oxford's focusing on is something we call digitally endangered languages. You might have 100 million speakers of isiZulu, and those speakers will be experiencing life in a digital sphere in English or another language, even if they're communicating with someone who's a house or two away. And so one of the things that we've been focusing on is building structured intelligent language data in languages that are not making that digital jump at this point. What we're hoping as we do this is that by developing that structured language data, we will be able to provide that to the tech sector so that it can start to use that data as a foundation to develop software, tools, and applications in that native language that then will be used by those communities, and so we create a virtuous circle.
One of the other big themes for the future is virtual reality and augmented reality. Does your product, does your data have a role to play in all of that?
Almost any new technology, we have a role to play in some way. And the way in which it needs to stay current and relevant to how we're talking and how we're defining everything that's changing around us, we have a really important role to play in that. And as long as we can continue to track and monitor how language is being used, we'll have a very important role in making sure that our digital lives reflect who we are and how we're talking about ourselves.
With IoT, with the Internet of Things, with things that can talk to you and you can talk to them, you have an opportunity as an advertiser to have the content be the start of a conversation as opposed to the only conversation, to have it be two-way instead of one-way. So I can, we did a campaign recently for a global FMCG brand.
Fast-moving consumer good brand.
Yes, a consumer packaged good brand, where we worked on IoT connected packaging for them. So instead of you just buying their product and having the packaging and you read it and you use it, there's an opportunity to access further content and further engagement with the brand through the actual packaging.
And what sort of difference do you think that made to the campaign?
I think it's very early for IoT. It's why we're doing it in places, but why we're much more invested in voice right now, because we think voice is here, whereas IoT we think is going to take a little bit of time to actually get to a scale where it is relevant to the business results of the clients that we work with.
The world has changed because of digital innovation, and the technologists believe the infrastructure is able to cope with increased consumer demand for media. But if what Eric Fulwiler says is true, social media companies are swapping access for our personalized data. It's all about trust, he says. Now that's something that the millennial generation is quite happy with. But for businesses to succeed, we all have to be on board. Trust, as they say, that works both ways.
I.O.T, powering the digital economy. Brought to you by Schneider Electric.